Spock and Lon are a more logical romance in Star Trek: Strange New Worlds. For a franchise built on exploring the galaxy's deepest mysteries, Star Trek has always been just as fascinated with the complexity of human connection. Strange New Worlds continues that tradition, balancing high-concept sci-fi with small, character-driven stories that reveal the crew's inner lives. Over 2 seasons, the series has teased multiple potential relationships, but one pairing stands out as the most unexpectedly rational and emotionally compelling: Spock and Lon Noonien Singh. While their bond has not evolved into a canonical romance, at least not one grounded in the prime timeline, their chemistry, compatible worldviews, and shared vulnerabilities make them a more logical romantic match than the show's flirtations with Nurse Chapel or any other would-be partner. The truth is simple: Spock and Lon make sense in a way that defies expectation, but aligns perfectly with both characters' arcs. One, they understand duty above desire. Spock and Lon are two officers defined primarily by their commitment to Starfleet duty. For both, service comes before personal fulfillment, and emotions often take a backseat to mission clarity. Spock's half-Vulcan heritage makes emotional regulation a lifelong discipline, while Lon's upbringing as a descendant of Khan Noonien Singh, the Federation's greatest genetic tyrant, trains her to prioritize survival, logic, and responsibility. Although their backgrounds differ, they share the same core instinct: suppressing emotions to remain effective. This alignment forms a natural foundation for mutual respect. Neither would demand that the other compromise their duty for romance. Instead, their relationship, should it ever develop, would be built around understanding boundaries that others might misinterpret as coldness. In contrast, the Spock-Chapel fling constantly struggled against this very issue. Chapel wanted emotional honesty, and Spock, still learning to navigate his dual nature, couldn't give it. Lon wouldn't take his restraint as rejection. She'd recognize it as discipline. Their time travel episode proved their unspoken chemistry. Strange New World Season 2, a standout episode, Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow, offered the clearest glimpse at the potential between Spock and Lon. The alternate timeline created by the temporal incursion provided Lon an unexpected emotional journey, one that centered on a version of Spock she did not expect to care for. Although this wasn't her Spock, the emotional impact remained. Lon's attraction to him wasn't based on fantasy, but on discovering qualities she already admired: his steadiness, his curiosity, his empathy beneath the discipline, his appreciation for Lon's strength. When she returned to the prime timeline, the heartbreak she carried wasn't from losing a different Spock. It was from realizing she could never express those feelings to the one who existed in her reality. Their moment in the transporter room, Lon visibly shaken, Spock unaware, was one of the show's most poignant, understated beats. The episode built a foundation that the writers haven't dismissed. Instead, it lingers beneath the surface, unresolved but undeniably present. Spock and Lon share a unique emotional restraint. Romance in Star Trek often leans into opposites: Kirk's passion with alien royalty, Riker's charm paired with implacable diplomats, or even Picard's restrained intellect clashing with more expressive partners. But Strange New Worlds offers something subtler by suggesting a romance between two characters who are similarly guarded. Spock hides emotion because of Vulcan tradition. Lon hides emotion because of personal trauma. Yet the effect is the same. Both struggle to let people in. Spock and Chapel's dynamic fizzled partly because Chapel is emotionally free, impulsive, and expressive, qualities Spock finds captivating but also destabilizing. She wants openness, vulnerability, and immediacy. Lon, on the other hand, understands emotional walls because she built her own out of survival. She would approach Spock's quiet moments not as a challenge to fix, but as a state she relates to. Their shared restraint creates a quiet harmony. They could open up to each other not through explosive confessions, but through small, deliberate gestures, something deeply fitting for both their personalities. Lon challenges Spock intellectually and emotionally. Many characters admire Spock's logic, but few challenge it in ways that help him grow. Lon, however, consistently pushes him, not out of ego or emotion, but because she expects excellence from everyone, including herself. The two work especially well together because she respects his logic, but isn't intimidated by it. She confronts him directly when he's wrong, something he values. She offers pragmatic solutions Spock finds intellectually stimulating. Their combined problem-solving skills make them one of the strongest duos aboard the Enterprise. In contrast, Chapel and Turing both involve emotional terrain that Spock struggles to navigate. With Lon, interactions are grounded, mutual, productive, exactly the type of partnership Vulcans traditionally find strongest. She doesn't need him to be something he's not. And that is precisely why their connection feels so organic. 5. Their trauma and identity struggles align perfectly. Spock and Lon are both defined by internal conflict about their identities. Spock's struggle, half Vulcan, half human, never fully accepted by either world. His arc is about reconciling the two halves of himself. Lon's struggle, descendant of a villain whose name inspires fear and prejudice. Her arc is about redefining what her ancestry means and finding belonging despite its darkness. Spock knows what it's like to be judged for something he didn't choose. Lon knows what it's like to live under a legacy she cannot escape. They are bound not just by shared pain, but by a shared journey. Each must learn to define themselves, not by heritage, but by choice. This makes them uniquely capable of offering empathy the other rarely receives. 6. Both characters avoid traditional romance tropes. The writers of Strange New Worlds have carefully crafted Lon and Spock as individuals who do not fit traditional romantic molds. That is precisely why their pairing feels so intriguing. Neither is prone to sudden infatuation. Neither craves attention, flattery, or romantic fantasy. Both approach relationships with caution rather than impulse. Yet the most compelling romances often arise not from grand gestures, but from quiet mutual understanding, and Spock and Lon share that in abundance. Their potential romance would be slow, deliberate, and deeply considered. Ironically, that would make it the most Star Trek-like relationship on the show. 7. Lon represents balance for Spock's emotional evolution. Spock's arc in Strange New Worlds involves exploring his human emotions more openly, but the Chapel romance sped that process too quickly. It became volatile, overwhelming, and unsustainable. Lon represents a healthier middle path. She wouldn't encourage him to abandon Vulcan discipline. She wouldn't push him toward emotional extremes. Instead, she embodies the idea of balance, understanding his need for control while offering space for his humanity to breathe. Lon doesn't want Spock to change. She wants him to be whole. 8. The show quietly positions them as parallel journeys. Look closely at the structure of Strange New Worlds, and it becomes clear that Lon and Spock are often paired thematically, even when not paired romantically. Episodes that challenge identity often center on one or both. Their personal arcs involve reconciling past trauma with future possibility. Both represent internal dualities, themes SNW explores in nearly every season. The writers may not be ready to commit to their romance, but they continually place the two characters in narrative roles that make them mirror images of one another. When Star Trek does that, it's rarely an accident. 9. Their romance would be a bold departure for Trek. Star Trek romances often fall into one of two categories. 1. The passionate/chaotic pairing, Kirk and almost everyone, Riker and Troy at times, Worf and Dax. 2. The destined/institutional pairing, Sisko and